Hi, my name is Al Snow, and you are watching me on Sportskeeda.
What does everybody want? A chance to vote for your favorite superstars, which is what we at Sportskeeda bring to you in the inaugural edition of the Sportskeeda Wrestling Awards. Joining us at this time is a man who is hailed as one of the greatest minds in the business, one of the greatest trainers, and also like one of the best wrestlers of all time. But something I've heard from numerous people is that he's also one of the funniest people alive. He's a former WWF hardcore champion, trainer of some of the biggest stars, and today the man behind OVW, Al Snow. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. If I were any better, I'd be jealous of myself.
Fantastic. So before we dive into the categories, I just want to know that you were around during the peak of the wrestling wars of the 90s. How would you compare the wrestling wars of the 90s to the current one that we are seeing?
Wrestling's very cyclical, much like everything is. And I don't think that wrestling is quite at the peak that it was back in the late 90s and early 2000s. Had both nationally and internationally had reached a astounding height of popularity during that period of time, and we were able to reach a very broad and very general audience, not just here in the United States, but literally all around the world at that time. So we still got a ways to go to reach those heights again, but I'm confident that we'll be able to do it and have another run like we did.
So, again, before we dive into the categories, would you say that you are enjoying wrestling more or less right now as compared to when you were an active performer?
I always enjoy wrestling. I've loved professional wrestling since I was 14 years old and on. And when I made the decision to be a professional wrestler, I've been so blessed and so lucky to have gotten to do what I love to do for as long as I've gotten to do it. This May 22nd of 2022 will be 40 years that I've been a professional wrestler and involved in the professional wrestling business. And I love it as much now as I did the very first day that I got to step in the ring back on May 22nd of 1982. So.
Once you say that, we know we made the right choice in choosing you as one of our eminent panelists for this awards show. Thank you so much for coming on. So,
thank you.
The first category, let's go to Male Wrestler of the Year. Would you pick Roman Reigns from WWE? Would you pick Big E from WWE? Would you pick Bryan Danielson, who started out last year in WWE but made maybe an even bigger impression in AEW? Would you pick CM Punk, who had maybe one of the greatest comebacks of the past decade last year? Or would you pick Kenny Omega, who's been having one great match after another?
I would pick Roman Reigns. I feel that Roman Reigns has finally come into himself. He started to find his voice and what worked for him in the angle with John Cena. And he has really stepped up his game and really is, capable of carrying the spot that he's now in. I think that Roman Reigns has been incredible as far as his development and his growth over this past year.
Why do you think it took him such a long time to find this character? I mean, wasn't the general consensus that Roman Reigns needs to turn heel a long time before he actually did?
It always takes time. It's the hardest and it's the most valuable thing for a professional wrestler to develop. And that is who they are. What's their voice? Because you as a fan have to believe in two things. The one most important thing is who that person is. If you can believe in who they are, then you'll believe in anything they do. The second is why are they doing it? Are they in the ring to win because of it being a competitive situation? Is there a personal vendetta that's involved that now precludes winning and now becomes more about personal vengeance? But at the end of the day, it still is about winning, about proving that you're the better man. And that takes for wrestlers, it takes a long time to develop. Doing the moves, doing the physicality, all professional wrestlers are incredible athletes, amazing high-level athletes. And so doing the physicality, doing the moves, it's not that hard to learn. It's knowing and projecting who you are that now allows an audience to connect with you emotionally. And that takes time. And, unfortunately for Roman Reigns, he was pushed too far to the top too quick. And he had to develop in the public eye. But now you can see that he's got his legs up underneath him and really knows who he is and what he's about.
Back when I was a kid, I remember when Hulk Hogan versus The Rock happened. It was a match between two generations. Do you think Dwayne Johnson and Roman Reigns could recreate the same kind of magic if that dream match were to happen?
Well, I think that they could create magic, yes. Do I think that they could create that kind of magic between Hulk Hogan and, between The Rock? That was a once in a lifetime situation, you've got Hulk Hogan, who's a master, an absolute master of the art of professional wrestling. And, Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, is no slouch in it as well. And they both were so adept at knowing what to do and when to do it. And if you remember, he didn't do really a whole lot physically, but what they did meant so much. And that comes from those years of experience and understanding and knowing what works for you and why it does.
Oh, I'm sorry for harping on this topic for so long before we move on, but you said something very interesting. As someone who has trained so many people over the years, do you think the internet vocal wrestling community gives Hulk Hogan a bad name for his wrestling skills when he is so very good? Right.
Yeah, I'll clear up a myth so that everybody will understand, okay? Years ago, because wrestling was such a closed business, it was easier to become a gangster in the mob than it was to become a professional wrestler. And the reason why it was so hard was because if an individual trains someone, then they accept responsibility for that person they've trained. And what that means is, if, let's say I train you and you now carry my name. So now if you go out in the wrestling world and you make a mistake, you do something that harms business, that comes back on me. That's my responsibility. And not too many people were willing to take that chance. What a lot of people don't realize is that Hulk Hogan was trained by a noted catch wrestler, Hiro Matsuda. And Hiro Matsuda was held accountable for whoever he broke into the business. And the first day that Hulk Hogan showed up, Hiro Matsuda broke his ankle, testing him, sent him home. Hulk's ankle, he recovered, and he went back and he continued to train. And anyone who really understands and knows the wrestling business in that time period knows for a fact that there is no way that Hiro Matsuda would have ever put his name on Hulk Hogan if Hulk Hogan didn't know how to wrestle. And what people don't realize and don't understand, audience, when in Hulk Hogan's heyday, an audience didn't pay to see Hulk Hogan wrestle. An audience paid to see Hulk Hogan be Hulk Hogan. That's like Steve Austin is a very adept wrestler. He was stunning Steve Austin in WCW, if you go back and watch. He was an incredible mat technician. But if you watch him as Stone Cold Steve Austin, He wrestles like a beer drinking, kicking redneck would wrestle, which is kicking, stomping, punching, being aggressive. And you could believe in him because of the fact that he did wrestle the way you would expect that kind of a guy to wrestle. The same goes for Hulk Hogan. Just because they don't wrestle does not mean they can't. It's that an audience paid to see Hulk Hogan be Hulk Hogan. They did not pay to see Hulk Hogan exchange wrist locks and hammer locks and takedowns and reversals. They didn't pay to see that. They paid to see Hulk be the Hulk and tear the shirt off and drop the leg and do those things. Same with Ultimate Warrior. They didn't pay to see Ultimate Warrior wrestle. They paid to see Ultimate Warrior be Ultimate Warrior. And the objective of being a professional wrestler is one, you have to be an adept wrestler. You have to be believable. But the most important thing is that you have to be an attraction. You have to be able to motivate large amounts of people to want to come and see you and experience watching you in the ring. And the only way to do that is to be able to create an identifiable, relatable persona, a character. And I really don't want to say a character because I want everybody to understand that characters don't work. They never have, they never will. Once in a while they do, but so that you understand, like Steve Austin is really the guy that you see in the ring. That's why you believe so much in him. He just turns the volume up on Steve Austin when he's out in the ring. Vince McMahon is really Vince McMahon. That's why you can believe in him, and that's why you want to see him and watch him, because it's who he really is. He just turns the volume up on that person, and that's the way it's always been. Undertaker is really like Undertaker to a degree in the backstage area. Goldust. I can go on down the list of successful wrestlers that you idolize and adore, and it is who that person really is in the ring, just magnified times 100. And that's why it works.
Thank you so much for that story. I mean, already minutes into this interview, it's been so enlightening. Let's move on to the next category, which is Female Wrestler of the Year. And for Female Wrestler of the Year, we have Dr. Britt Baker from AEW. We have Becky Lynch from WWE. We have Sasha Banks from WWE. We have Bianca Belair again from WWE. And we have Mickie James from Impact Wrestling. Who would you pick as the female wrestler?
Well, I would have to give it to Mickie James to be able to reinvent herself, and in a lot of cases, where you're a professional wrestler, we get what's called a run, and it's not a matter of if your run will end; it's a matter of when it will end. You have to be a certain talent to be able to come back, reinvent yourself, or keep yourself relevant to where you can get yet another run. And Mickie James has been so adept over the past year at doing that. So my hats are off to her. My respect to all the ladies. They're all incredible. I would have been torn between Becky Lynch and Britt Baker, but with Mickie James on the list, I'll have to give her the nod. Not to mention she's an OVW alumni. So, I got to play.
Okay, so you have worked for WWE, you have worked for Impact. Did you ever imagine in your wildest dreams that the Impact Knockouts Championship would be featured in the Royal Rumble as?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's just good business. And WWE's at a point where WWE's untouchable. No one's going to out WWE, quite honestly. That's been that way for decades. And the reason why, it's not because I'm a WWE or loyalist or anything like that. It's just a simple fact of the matter is that you've got literally generations of experience. Vince's grandfather was a promoter in the Northeast, with Capital Wrestling, with Toots Mondt. Vince Sr. was the WWF. Vince Jr. bought that from his father and then brought it to the present day, to the heights And that now you are trying to, if you're trying to compete or combat WWE, you're combating generations of experience, generations of connections, generations of resources that you just can't match up to. I don't care who or what company it is. Do what you can to make your company the best possible. Separate it and make it completely an alternative to WWE. Make it something different. Carve out your own market share of the wrestling business, as opposed to trying to go head to head with WWE, because you're not going to win.
Right. Moving on to the next category. Let's go to Feud of the Year. We have CM Punk versus MJF. We have Omega versus Page. We have Reigns versus Cena. We have Rollins versus Edge. And we have Shida versus Deep. Who would you pick?
Well, I would, if I were wanting to go in a new direction, Punk and MJF certainly has been very entertaining and very believable, and very reminiscent of verbal battles that, some of the top guys in WWE used to have. I would say, though, I'd have to give it to Reigns and John Cena, because that was the place where Reigns really started to find his voice and really started to come out, and it truly earned the audience's respect during that time, to where he wasn't just another shell that was propped up by the WWE promotion. He came into his own, much like when they put The Rock into the Nation of Domination, and he found his voice in the Nation of Domination when he no longer was the focus. He was no longer in the spotlight. It gave him a place to relax and to find his confidence. And in spite of the fact that he was very much in the center of the spotlight with John Cena, he was able to not only hold his own, but at times was able to outdo John Cena and earn that, earn the audience's respect, because you no longer do you hear Roman Reigns sucks or any of those chants. The crowd is now, they totally and firmly believe in Roman Reigns, and that was a testament to his talent and his ability to step up his game with John Cena. So I would have to give that as the Feud of the Year.
Perfect. Let's move on to the Babyface of the Year. Who's the choices are Big E, Liv Morgan, Xavier Woods, Darby Allin, or Hangman Adam Page?
I'm going to say Darby Allin. Darby Allin's come out of nowhere. He is an underdog type of babyface, being smaller, has a unique look and approach, and has really done a great job of developing a following, an audience. He's gotten over in the true term of what that means, because most people don't know anymore what get over means. To get over is to where you, the audience, kind of want to live vicariously through Darby Allin, and you kind of want to emulate him. You want to, be like him. If you imagine you're going to wrestle, you're going to wear gear like him. You're going to do moves like him. That's what getting over is, and it's the most essential piece of business that we have to conduct in wrestling, because if we don't get somebody over, we don't get heat. Darby has been able to create something new and unique and captivate an audience to where they identify with him. So I have to give the nod to Darby Allin.
So we had JBL appear on our platform, and he spoke about if he ever became a manager, he would want to become Baron Corbin's manager or King Corbin's manager, because they are at the same height. Do you think the visual of Darby and Sting, with Sting being significantly taller than him, does some amount of harm?
No, not at all. Not at all. It doesn't matter. Size is not the absolute essential that gets a wrestler over. What gets a wrestler over is number one. First and foremost is believability. You've got to believe in who that person is. Okay. Number two is, do they? Everybody louds praise on Ricky Morton as being like the quintessential babyface, and everyone says, and they get it all wrong. It's because he could sell. No, that's not it. What made Ricky Morton so over was, if a guy my size, I'm 6'2", 240, I were to grab Ricky Morton and put him back in the turnbuckle, if I didn't get off of him too quick, he came straight forward and his fists balled up and was ready to fight. Regardless of the size difference, he was ready to fight. He then taught all of you, the audience watching, that no matter how big the fight it was, he was the guy that had the biggest fight in him. And he would find some way to win despite the odds. Darby Allin has kind of got that, where unfortunately, though, Darby Allin, he does a lot of not very smart things to his body. And unfortunately, he's going to have a very short career. And he's going to pay a major price when he gets older. That all comes back to haunt you. Take it from me. I did a lot of very stupid physical things in my career. And, there's not a day that I don't wake up and that my body I'm not racked with pain. If I tomorrow were to wake up and something weren't to hurt, I would ask my wife to kick me right in the groin so that I would feel normal for the rest of the day. So it's, it takes a toll physically. It's a very physical and very hard business, but the things that Darby is doing, he can't do on a consistent basis, and he can't keep up. And if he then now teaches you that that's the one thing that you identify with, and that's what gets him over with you, well, now he has to do that on a regular basis, not just once a week on TV, but now if they start running a live event schedule and Darby has to perform like that 7 nights a week, how long is his career going to last? Not long. He's going to suffer a major injury at some point, and then he's going to be on the shelf, and then he might lose all that he gained over this last year. So he's got to learn to work a lot smarter and to capitalize on what he does.
Do you think smaller guys by default have some kind of chip on their shoulder? Because if Rey Mysterio did not have his set of moves, maybe he wouldn't have been the beloved character. Sorry, you hate the word character. The beloved wrestler that we love so much.
No, because again, it's more than just moves. You think and equate everything to move. What you really liked about Rey Mysterio is the very same thing that I'm about Ricky Morton. Right. His body language, the way he carried himself, the way he never backed down from a wrestler, no matter how much bigger that wrestler was than he was. You thought and believed and really thought that Rey Mysterio, regardless of the size difference, would find a way to win. Did you not?
I did.
So it wasn't the moves. It was the belief in the wrestler. That was what made him so popular. Do you understand? Absolutely. And if you pay attention to Rey Mysterio's career prior to arriving in WWE, he did a lot more moves in each individual match. And then when he got in WWE, he scaled back those moves to only 3 or 4 prominent ones, and then occasionally a few others here or there when he needed them. But he didn't continuously do them to the degree that he did prior to arriving to WWE, because the schedule is just too hard.
Amazing. Thank you for that insight. And our final category that we are going to move to is Heel of the Year. We have Roman Reigns, we have Britt Baker, we have MJF, we have Becky Lynch, and we have Charlotte Flair. Who's your pick for Heel of the Year?
MJF, without a question or a doubt. MJF does the one thing that you guys all applaud and you think is something new, and that he just reinvented the wheel, or like when Matt Hardy did it. And what you fail to realize is that we've been in wrestling, been doing this for decades, actually for the entirety of the time that wrestling's been around. And that is always maintaining who you sold on TV to the audience 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It doesn't matter social media, it doesn't matter public appearances. MJF is the guy that you saw on TV. He change, he doesn't alter it, and you don't see him with one of the guys taking pictures backstage, hanging out, eating dinner together. You don't ever see that. So you as an audience, you always get what you paid to see in MJF. And that's I give that advice to young wrestlers these days constantly, because their job is to motivate you to want to watch them when they use, because social media is not the problem. All of you are the problem. The way you use social media is the problem. Social media is just a tool. That's like, hey, I hit my thumb with a hammer, so the hammer's bad. No, it's because you put your thumb in the wrong place, and that's why you hit it with the hammer. Same with social media. It's just a tool. It's a marvelous, amazing tool that for young wrestlers today, if they use them wisely, if they use it smartly, they can make themselves into an attraction, into a draw, and without ever being on TV. Where back in the day, we were limited, we were restricted, and only could we make ourselves more of an attraction, a draw, the more we were on a promoter's television platform. But now with social media, you can do it on your own, and you can make yourself a value to major promotional platforms around the world without ever having to step foot or sign a contract to be on their promotional platform. That's incredible. But you can also make your job 1,000 times harder by simply allowing the audience to be too far behind the curtain and removing the mystique of professional wrestling and then basically saying, hey, you know that guy that I told you that you were supposed to like, you were supposed to hate, or the guy that you were supposed to like? Well, that's not who I really am. So now I can't believe in you anymore. So if I can't believe in who you are, guess what? I'm not going to believe in anything you do.
Very interesting. Okay, so now here's a two-parter. Who would you say is the best heel that you shared a locker room with? And who is the best heel for you of all time?
Jeez. Best heel that I've shared a locker room. God, there've been so many. I'd say when Jerry Lawler is a heel. Yeah. I mean, he's a genius. And Ole Anderson. Ole Anderson in a time period. So you understand this. So you can really grasp what I'm saying. Years ago in the United States, wrestling was very regional, was territorial. And you usually didn't buy a house. You didn't settle down because, like I alluded to before, all wrestlers, have their run. And at some point, that run comes to an end, meaning that you're a product. You grow stale. You only have a certain amount of shelf life. So when those times come, you have to move somewhere else, leave, go somewhere else and reinvigorate yourself, go audience, reinvent yourself, things like that. Ole Anderson was able to not only buy a home, but set up a residence for years in the Carolinas because he was adept at being a heel. He was so believable and drew so much heat that he could draw money in the same territory for years at a time, where normally a wrestler would only be able to stay for a certain period of time and then have to leave and then come back and then leave again and then come back. He was able to stay and stay and stay, for decades. And that's a testament of just how really good as a heel he was. Other than him, I would say the original Sheik. Ed Farhat, because as a kid, I was terrified of him. And when I broke into the wrestling business and he would walk in the locker room, I was still terrified of him.
So it's interesting. I think a lot of our panelists mentioned that. I believe Rob Van Dam also mentioned the original Sheik as his pick for the greatest heel of all time.
Oh, yeah. When the original Sheik would come out, and you have to understand, the original Sheik wasn't giant. He wasn't enormous. Okay, but when he'd come out and he'd go at that, at the rail, fans would scatter. And I mean adults would run and panic because people believed that he was crazy and that he would hurt you, And I remember, being like 19 or 20 years old and being in a locker room when the Sheik would come in, and oh, it's the Sheik. Oh my God. Like scared. You know what I mean? He couldn't be a nicer guy, but scared. Just scared.
Perfect. So you have heard what Al Snow had to say, all his choices. Now it's your chance to go vote for your favorite wrestlers. Maybe you agree with Al, maybe you do not, but here's your chance to make yourself heard. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of the panel. And before you go, could you tell us about OVW and how audiences around the world can tune in and catch all the action?
Absolutely, I would love to. OVW is on Fight TV every Thursday night from 7 Eastern until 9 Eastern. Other than WWD and AEW, we're the only promotion, I really believe, that does live television every single week. We have been in existence over 30 plus years. We have more than 200 alumni that have become stars in WWE and Impact, in New Japan, around the world. You can watch us on YouTube if you want. You can also watch us on what I said, Fight TV live from 7 to 9 Eastern time Thursday nights. And we have our own Roku channel. We're on Amazon Fire and Amazon Prime and Sports International, which is an international sports channel. You can access us there. If anybody has any other interests, they can check out our website at ovwrestling.com. And our training school is the Al Snow Wrestling Academy. It is the only actually certified as a trade school for professional wrestling and sports entertainment in the world. We're the ones that are actually accredited by the State Office of Proprietary Education as a trade school for professional wrestling in the world. If they have interest in attending the trade school, they can go to aswa.live and they can check it out.
Thank you so much for your time. And before we log out, one last thing, Vince Russo's the brand. You are associated with Vince Russo's brand. Could you tell our audience what you do for them?
Yes, Vince Russo's the brand. I have a weekly show with Vince Russo called Lions, Tigers, Bears, and Head, because I have Head with me all the time. And we talk about all of the top news topics, the wrestling news topics around the world every week. And I try to give a little bit of insight in those situations where, like today, where I try to explain what really goes on, or what really the terms mean, or what the thought process behind a decision was potentially. Because being a professional wrestler, I've been a professional wrestler, in-ring performer. I've been a commentator. I've been a color commentator. I've been a host. I have been a executive, and I have been a producer and a writer and a booker. And I've basically done every single possible job in professional wrestling there is, and have years of experience and understanding that I try to impart to the fans to help them have a better respect, greater appreciation, and more enjoyment of what they are watching. And I try to do that like I did tonight or today. I do that with Vince Russo's podcast as well whenever we discuss the events and the headlines that are in the wrestling world.
Thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you very much.